Story, Americans like to conceive major projects and build them and make them happen.
Robertson approached Laredo Taft, who designed the Columbus Fountain in D.C., and Daniel Chester French, who designed the Lincoln Memorial. But an urban monument is a very different beast from a remote mountain. Robertson got wind of a massive carving underway on Stone Mountain in Georgia.
Stone Mountain's a Confederate memorial to Confederate soldiers.
The sculptor on that ambitious project was Borglum.
Borglum was a very patriotic gentleman, also a big thinker. He studied under Auguste Rodin, who's of course known for the thinker. So he begins to make art that's larger than life. He always believed that American art should be larger than life.
Doane Robertson knew he had his man, but Borglum was busy on Stone Mountain, until suddenly he wasn't.
The Daughters of the Confederacy were the commissioning people for that sculpture, and Borglum and the daughters did not necessarily get along very well.
The split was anything but amicable. The Confederates ended up blasting Borglum's work off Stone Mountain and starting over.
So, luckily, that did free him up to come here. You know, their loss was our gain.
The excitable Borglum was totally on board with Robertson's idea of a Western theme carved in the Needles, as long as it wasn't a Western theme, and it wasn't in the Needles.
The sight of needles simply wouldn't work at all. It's not that the rock is bad, but there's so many fractures that the rocks end up looking like needles, which does not give you a solid mass of rock to put a sculpture in.
So the two men hunted through the Black Hills for a carvable surface.
He was looking for a large enough ridgeline to encompass an ever-growing idea, and he wanted it to be made out of Harney Peak granite.
They found what they were looking for in Keystone, South Dakota. On a tip from the locals, Borglum and Robertson scouted a mountain called Rushmore.
Well, Mount Rushmore, that granite, and it's like 3 millimeter diameter crystals, over a billion-year-old rock, very durable, so it makes a marvelous medium for a mega sculpture.
And they rode up on horseback, and upon viewing the ridgeline, Borglum knew that was the one.
But there was one very big drawback to Rushmore.
It was still quite remote out here. The roads to Mount Rushmore were barely existent. According to Borglum, he wrote many pages on how bad the road was. And they had to even do a little road work themselves.
And before he started carving, Borglum expanded Robertson's regional theme to a national one.
Oh, we could do, presidents, and it would be for the whole nation.
So he chose presidents. He chose them and chose why they would be chosen.
Washington and Lincoln were the obvious national choices. Borglum chose Jefferson for a surprisingly local reason.
Thomas Jefferson chosen for not the Declaration of Independence, but Louisiana Purchase, which doubled the size of the nation.
The Louisiana Purchase also added South Dakota to the Union. So Borglum set out to carve the father of the country, flanked by the man who expanded it and the man who held it together. Each of the three faces would be 60 feet tall. But not everyone was on board with the patriotic plan.
There were local religious groups that believed, why should a human being touch something that God made?
To sell the idea to the locals and to raise some much-needed funds, Borglum planned a grand dedication, but it was not easy to get to it.
And that first dedication, there were old cars that were, unable to make it up the hill and getting stuck on the route up here. Of course, what did the visitors do? They just got out and walked. Hauled their coolers with them.
He took all of the men to work on the roads, and one of the workers said, I looked over and there's Gutson at his age, packing rocks right with the rest of us.
In a major PR coup, Borglum convinced the current president, Calvin Coolidge, to show up.
The president of the country needed to come see the presidents where they were going to be placed.
The headgear was Coolidge's idea. But despite the high-profile endorsement, there was nowhere near enough money to pull this off.
Sure, money was a big problem, of course. So donations were taken from around the nation.
Borglum raised money however he could. He even started a children's donation campaign.
They actually had a milk money donation system where they'd go ask kids to donate nickels and dimes and quarters and pennies.
So they got the school kids, particularly in South Dakota, excited.
But the mighty mountain came up against an unlikely competitor.
Actually, the yo-yo was invented right in that same time period, so kids were spending money on a yo-yo instead of giving money to the sculpture. Gotta have a yo-yo, right? So that funding kind of dried up.
Yes, that darn yo-yo.
Faced with inadequate infrastructure, an inexperienced labor pool, and insufficient funding, Borglum did what any larger-than-life visionary would do. He got to work.
They, of course, began to realize right away you can't chip at a mountain like this and remove what amounts to 35 or 40 foot of rock with a hammer. That's not going to work.
Trying vapes to quit smoking might feel like progress.
People like Guts and Borglum are absolutely fascinating. The kind of person that would probably rub the nerves of most everybody they came in contact with, but these are the attributes of a lot of the personalities that do the major accomplishments.
To carve 3 60-foot heads on the face of Mount Rushmore, Guts and Borglum needed to recruit fearless men who knew how to handle a jackhammer.
And the workers were miners. They knew how to use dynamite, they knew how to drill, they had the tools of the trade, except for now, it's a different perspective to go from mass production to finite detail.
It's very clear that Gutson taught these local folks. He trained them, he'd instruct them.
Borglum was working at a time when there was surplus labor that wanted to work. So, in a sense, the Great Depression helped Borglum get the thing started because he had a lot more available talent.
But all those drillers needed to carve a single vision. Borglum had to find a way to direct their drills.
At Stone Mountain, he figured out how to project the image onto the rock face. And then they painted the outline on Stone Mountain.
Unfortunately, his giant projector wouldn't work on this craggy mountain.
Now here they couldn't do that because of the nature of this rock and the fissures within this granite.
So Borglum developed an ingenious transfer system he called pointing.
So there's a scale model. The 1/12 scale model is the measuring tool. They have a pointing system on top of each one of the faces, triangulating that particular feature that they're measuring, and then transferring those measurements back up to the mountain face.
The ruler measured the distance from a fixed point on top of the head to a specific point on the model. The protractor measured the angle. Up on the mountain, the angle remained the same. The distance was multiplied by 12 to precisely match the model.
Then they would take the measurements, transfer them up 1 inch is 1 foot, place those measurements on the sculpture, and begin to drill and blast.
The panels themselves, as they were finished completely to their feet, measured about 48 feet in height, or about 1/3 the size of the Statue of Liberty.
The men doing the pointing were Borglum's eyes and hands on the giant sculpture.
The pointer was the most important man on the mountain.
But wielding a pneumatic jackhammer on the side of a cliff was not a skill that most miners practiced.
So they're hanging in midair, and they sat in the bosun's chair and made the drill do its work.
And you're at kind of an awkward angle all day long holding 35 pounds that's moving. There were no chubbies here.
Out on the face of the mesa, the drillers couldn't see the men who were guiding their ropes, so they hired call boys to relay their signals.
So a young lad walked his way out to the edge so that he could see the person down on the vertical surface and call back to the winch house to tell the winchman to go up or down.
But drills alone would never get the job done.
off, you do huge blasts, just trying to strip off the veneer of the mountain to get into the core, into the inside where the rock's going to be fresher and stronger. It's a mammoth undertaking, and each time you take off tons of rock, you don't know what you're going to run into behind those tons of rock.
And dynamite blasts could ruin the delicate work, so powdermen created microblasts.
Then you start doing it on a smaller scale with drill holes, putting smaller bits of dynamite in it to start getting a rough shape to the faces.
They were able to drill and blast to within 3 inches of the finished product. 3 inches.
Borglum's army fought the Great Mountain for 2 years to reveal the head of George Washington. They moved on to Jefferson for a year and a half, until the angry mountain fought back.
They were making Jefferson's head. They had to abandon it, dynamite that head they'd already largely made.
It was a major setback for him.
I try to bring a positive...
The movement of muscle has always been known for. But when we announced last call, some people got nervous. They thought we were gonna slow down, pack it in, ride off into the sunset. Think again.
I'm Walt. I have relapsing MS and a lot going on. That's why my doctor and I chose Kesimpta.
Kesimpta is different. It's the only B-cell treatment for RMS you can take at home, once a month. Kesimpta was proven superior at reducing the rate of relapses, active lesions, and slowing disability progression versus Aubagio.
For me, a once-a-month treatment just works for my schedule.
Don't take Kesimpta if you have hepatitis B, and tell your doctor if you have had it, as it could come back. Kesimpta can cause serious side effects, including infections. While no cases of PML were reported in RMS clinical trials, it could happen. Tell your doctor if you had or plan to have vaccines, or if you are or plan to become pregnant. Kesimpta may cause a decrease in some types of antibodies. The most common side effects are upper respiratory tract infection, headache, and injection reactions.
When I'm ready, I'll spend less than 1 minute a month taking Kesimpta. How I spend the rest of my time is up to me.
Ask your doctor about treating RMS with Kesimpta.
Going to cheerleading camp next to the abandoned insane asylum, it's like throwing the blood away. 50% of Americans like watching blood get spilled in horror movies, but only 3% don't. Now that's scary.
Stand Up to Cancer is closer than ever before to achieving its mission to make every cancer patient into a long-term survivor. To learn more and get Advantage Miles, go to standuptocancer.org/American Airlines.
1. We see the people.
Detroit has just changed so much. You can see what it once was. And then I think about what it can be. As an entrepreneur, it's about how I can give them the tools to empower themselves. If we can just all do something small, all the small things will start to amount to something big.
That's why we're here, to help make it happen. J.P. Morgan Chase.
The DOJ impacting the election, how their pursuit of Trump could affect the race. Larry cuts through the interference on Kudlow. Then Bidenomics versus Reaganomics. In a battle of economic plans, can Joe's agenda hold up? Kevin O'Leary breaks it down tomorrow on the Evening Edit.
Asthma isn't pretty. It's the moment when you realize that a good day is about to become a bad one. But then I remembered that the world is so much bigger than that with Trelegy, because 1 dose a day helps keep my asthma symptoms under control. And with 3 medicines and 1 inhaler, Trelegy helps improve lung function so I can breathe easier for a full 24 hours.
Trelegy won't replace a rescue inhaler for sudden breathing problems. Trelegy contains a medicine that increases risk of hospitalizations and death from asthma problems when used alone. When this medicine is used with an inhaled corticosteroid, like in Trelegy, there is not a significant increased risk of these events. Do not take Trelegy more than prescribed. Trelegy may increase risk of thrush and infections. Get emergency care for serious allergic reactions. See your doctor if your asthma does not improve or gets worse.
Ask your doctor about once daily Trelegy for asthma, because breathing should be beautiful.
Epson Eco Tank wants to know, does your printer run out of ink at the worst time?
Cartridges. Tiny, dinky, expensive.
Don't get cartridged. Switch to the cartridge-free Epson Eco Tank. Comes with big bottles of ink. The bottle snap in place, then you just fill and chill. Prints up to 5,000 pages.
That would have taken me like 80 cartridges.
Welcome to Chillville.
I love it here.
Switch at EpsonEcoTank.com. Just fill and chill!
The day you get your Clear Choice dental implants makes every day a confident day. A never hide my smile day. A life of the party day. A take on the world day. A believe in myself day. A flash my new teeth day. Because your Clear Choice day is the day you get your confidence back for good. A Clear Choice day changes every day. Schedule a free consultation.
Making money with Charles Payne on Fox Business.
I try to bring these numbers to life by removing the intimidation factor. After all, the goal for all of us is making money.
Making money with Charles Payne on Fox Business.
It was a nasty little island.